And then we use this, right, to go.
Mhm.
Slide that over.
And then I will start the presentation.
And I'll move it for you, Belinda. I'm way down here.
Okay, all yours.
Okay, so good morning. We are here for our first stakeholder engagement and education meeting. This one is specifically for Mayor Commission. It is a public meeting. And we're going to go through the local housing trust funds. We're going to talk about the flexibility of having this financing tool.
How do I? There we go. Thank you.
All right, so for today's agenda, we're doing the intro and updates now. We're going to go through an overview of the scope of work. We're going to go through the housing trust funds. We're going to have a Q&A. We're going to do a market overview, and then we're going to do another Q&A. And the majority of this meeting is going to be run by Anna and by Tammy, who will introduce in just a few minutes. So the Affordable Housing Investment Strategy, this was a strategic plan that was developed in partnership with HR&A. What came from it were three core housing financing needs. So we defined that we need gap financing for LIHTC projects, which are low income housing tax credit projects for multifamily rentals. We determined we needed a funding for a single family housing fund. And this would be specific to home buyer units, homeowner projects, acquisition, new construction. It could be rehab, down payment assistance. It runs the gamut. And then finally, support for an acquisition strike fund. This is to support acquisition of rental units. And we are going to have to figure out during this time, one of our things is, what do we want that fund to look like? Do we want it to be expansive to any type of housing unit for acquisition, or do we want it to be a multifamily type of program? So,
Melinda, since I'm the person here asking questions on that, the acquisition strike fund, is that with the idea that Clarke, who would Athens-Clarke County would be using the funds to acquire this rehabilitate rental properties? Would we be doing this through some other community agency? Would we be getting into the rental business?
no, the whole housing trust fund will be managed by an external entity. It will not be managed by ACC Gov. So an external, it could be a private developer, it could be a nonprofit developer. If they found a property that they wanted to acquire for rehab for rental purposes, then they could apply for that funding.
Okay.
And then there would be an affordability period tied to it. But no,
that's what I thought.
Yeah, the whole point of the housing trust fund is ACC Gov cannot do this type of activity for any purpose. It's in violation of the gratuities clause. So we have to find an external agent that can manage these funds for us and make sure that that money's getting out there for our purposes for what we want it to do.
Got it.
Good question. We'll go more into the.
Oh yeah, we're going to get real in depth. You're going to love it. Okay, so in October of 2023, Mayor Commission accepted the Affordable Housing Investment Strategy. So a part of that was approving and funding activities to develop our local housing trust fund. And again, so we have Affordable Housing Special Revenue Fund is the parent account, and then Housing Trust Fund activities are, sorry, it's just distracting.
Wait till it's.
There we go. Okay, so for FY25, Mayor Commission approved an allocation of $5.441 million to go toward LIHTC gap financing, single family affordable housing, and acquisition strike fund. And as you can see in the slide, LIHTC gap financing received 2.441, and the reason that 441 exists is it was determined by Commissioner Defined Option CDO that all LIHTC gap financing payment in lieu of money would stream into that LIHTC gap financing line item. So we had a 1.965 payment in lieu of payment, and it helped fund that original.
Just so
Okay,
I'm clear, is that a misprint then? It should be 2441. No, that's correct. Okay. Just making sure.
Yeah, no, it's 2.441. It's okay though.
Okay, well, I'll make that edit.
Yeah, that's fine.
So the payment in lieu of is all I know we approved this, that I voted for it, but, it's all going into the, like, a gap.
LIHTC gap financing.
LIHTC gap, that's the, okay.
Yep. And then the single family affordable housing fund received 2 million. Acquisition strike fund received another 1 million. And then in FY26, Mayor Commission approved another 1 million, which brought that fund up to 6.441 million. And then turned around and had two requests, $3.5 million housing trust fund loan for North Downtown Athens Phase 2, and then $1 million loan for Classic City Heights. Both were approved in this last voting session in October, and that comes straight out of that. So unfortunately, it did kind of touch into the other two lines, the other two accounts. So as of right now, our single family affordable housing fund has approximately 1.5 million. And our acquisition strike fund has 939,000. It's just a little below a little below $1 million. And as of right now, the LIHTC gap financing has about $11,000.
Okay.
So we're now operating on our housing trust fund to get this up and running at about 2.4 million right now. That's what we have. And then once that money was invested into a housing trust fund, we immediately, I will kudos to Courtney and the attorney's office, started doing some investigating, connected us with some other public entities that are managing housing trust funds. And then that's how we found LEH Consultants. They had just recently helped Make and Bid get their affordable housing fund up and running. And so we contracted with them. And so now we're in phase 1 to get ours started.
Great. And, Melinda, up in the title, like up at the top, in the introductory line, Athens-Clarke County Commissioners accepted this. It says the creation of a local housing trust fund. Down here, we're talking about the Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
It's interchangeable.
Okay, just wanted to make sure because we have other things.
I think we're trying to, and when we develop it and when we actually implement, it won't be called a housing trust fund. There's kind of a stigma to that. So you can call it a local housing fund, a local affordable housing fund, or just an affordable housing fund, but they're all interchangeable. We're talking about the same thing.
The stigma is the word trust.
Affordable sometimes.
Affordable,
or
the trust.
Sometimes trust is confused with like a trust, like a family trust.
Right.
And like how that's set up. So sometimes people, but it's interchangeable. to
Right,
your
just
point.
take that word out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Avoid that.
we haven't
Okay.
really decided the lingo we're going to use, but apologies for that confusion. They are interchangeable.
Okay. And I'll
so-
make that edit so we can make sure it's consistent.
And yeah, so for the purpose of this is technically, legally, it is a housing trust fund. So we've just been calling it an HTF,
Okay.
Yes, we have. Yeah.
but when it's developed, it will, I think Making Bibbs is affordable housing fund. That's what they call it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So we probably will call it.
It'll be however we decide, or you guys decide to brand it. And
Yeah.
like you said, I mean, there would probably be its own logo and things like that, but
Yeah.
it's a great question. Yes. I know in the document, in the AHIS document, it called it like Athens-Clarke County Affordable Housing Trust Fund. It was like
It was a long,
Yeah.
and it was a little bit too much.
yeah. So, because I remember the acronym was like ACC. AHT. Yeah.
Yeah, and they call it local housing fund. So, I mean, again, they're all interchangeable, but the most important thing to take from this is that this funding cannot be managed by the county because of the nature of what it does. You cannot give or even loan taxpayer money for the purposes of development of affordable housing for personal gain. So it has to be managed by either a housing,
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
affordable housing, like a housing authority,
Yeah.
or a CDFI or a nonprofit, and usually a nonprofit CDFI usually manages these, and they're going to get really in the weeds with that. So
They're gonna get it. But
Yes.
this gets to the question that actually, what I was just, what one of our, Tiffany, one of our fellow commissioners here asked about, how does one like apply for this? And basically you're saying we have to have this thing set up before anyone can apply
Correct.
for it.
the only entity that right now legally that we can loan money to, because it's a housing authority, is the Athens Housing Authority.
Okay.
That's the only one we can directly loan to, which is how we were able to do those two
The like.
approved, those two loans. Otherwise, these loans will only be available once this fund is up and running, is implemented and managing.
But those were, you see how many questions I have. So those were loans that are going to be repaid and the money's gonna go back in here.
Correct.
That's not necessarily the case with the other, I mean, they may be grants.
No,
It all has to be loans.
this
Okay.
has to be a self-sustaining,
Okay.
money generating
Revolving loan
fund.
fund.
It's a
Yes,
revolving
it's a
loan
revolving-
fund. It
Okay,
cannot be
okay.
grant because
That's important.
this is going, now, it's favorable loan
Mhm.
price. It's usually
Right,
very
right,
low
right, right, right,
interest.
right.
One of the things you might have noted in the Classic City Heights,
Yeah.
was that they were allowed to go without payment during development. No
Yeah.
payments were required during development, and once construction was finished, then there was a period where they only had to pay interest.
Okay, yeah.
And then once it hits a certain time, then it's either a balloon payment or refinance the loan and begin paying on the principal. So it's very favorable terms, but that it still has to be managed as a loan. Otherwise, you're going to run out of money and
Right.
you're not going to have
Okay.
fund anymore.
Yeah, and we'll go into some in the
Yeah,
weeds on some
okay.
of those examples as well.
But,
right.
Yeah, Tiffany, you were not here, so answering the question you had in your email.
Okay.
So we had 6.441 million. And if you look up there, it tells you what we had in each source, except the LIHTC was 4.441.
Yeah, and then
So when we gave out the loan for 3.5 and 1 million, essentially what we had to do was we had to borrow 500,000 from the single family affordable housing, and we had to borrow a little bit from acquisition strike fund. So at this time, the LIHTC gap financing is at 11,000. Single family affordable housing is about 1.5 million, and acquisition strike fund is just a little below a million.
When I sent the email, I had a, I was like, Andrew and Melinda's probably gonna say, I told Commissioner Taylor this 3 times. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
It's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
It's so much. I have
But
to read
here,
it, girls.
but here you
I
go.
have to read it every time we start to talk about it. I have to like refresh myself. It's a
Yeah.
lot. It's not just.
Hell no,
And
Yeah.
in all fairness,
a lot of moving parts.
this is
right?
what I do all the time, so it sticks in my head. I don't have all the other stuff I have to remember too. So that's
Yeah,
it's all-
questions, you have 10,000 things and this
Correct.
is just one, right?
Yeah, yep, exactly.
Yes, yeah, exactly. But I will make those tweaks,
Yeah.
Melinda, on that. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
And I'll make-
I should have caught that. We just need to add that another 1 million.
mhm.
It wasn't allocated specifically for anything. It ended up in the
Yeah. So we
LIHTC.
want to send this presentation out to everyone, so I want
Right.
to make sure that any of those
Yeah.
are corrected. So,
Mhm.
I'll also add that the consistency that you brought up, Carol, about the local housing fund, just so we use the same
Right.
consistent language. Because again, like in the documents, it says affordable housing fund, but we call it HTA. We call it housing trust funds in
Mhm,
the
mhm.
industry. So,
Yeah. And Tiffany, this is Anna,
Nice
and this
to
is
meet you.
Tammy,
Nice to meet you.
and they are LEH
Stuff again.
consultants.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Absolutely. I was.
We just got
Right,
started.
We're glad.
I'm glad.
Yeah, we should get
I'm glad you made it.
Yesterday, that facilitating training, I was like, I need to know this.
Oh, good.
Well, we're really glad you made it.
Thanks for.
Okay, and now I'm gonna hand it over to LEH.
All right. Thank you. Thanks. And again, I'm Tammy Hoy Hawkins. It's a pleasure to meet you. I got to meet Carol earlier. And do you prefer Tiffany? Okay, great. Thanks. So excited to be here. A little bit about myself, and then we'll kind of jump right in. And certainly this is a great intimate group,
Yes,
which
so
is great.
nice
So
that
the
it's
questions
small.
are nice. So I actually was in South Carolina for about 30 years, so we may have crossed over. But my background is I started in affordable housing community development, and I started at the city of Charleston. I had the opportunity to work under Mayor Riley at the time, and 2002 is when we launched our very first local housing trust fund in Charleston. And so we actually, I was the first executive director, helped to create the enabling legislation that allowed for housing trust funds to exist in South Carolina. Sort of fast forward, have helped launch probably 7 different housing trust funds throughout my career. Always been in a community development finance space, led CDFIs, and I also work closely on neighborhood-based redevelopment strategies. So I do a lot with neighborhood transformation, kind of using the purpose-built communities model, which I know you've got several purpose-built communities here in Georgia. And so I've also done a lot of place-based neighborhood development as well. So that's just a snapshot about me and sort of being a practitioner, having sat in Melinda and Marquita's shoes, and as well working for local government, and then also working for nonprofit loan funds as well. So that's just a little bit about me and my colleague Anna. So we launched the first housing trust fund in Charleston. It then grew to be the South Carolina Community Loan Fund, which was a statewide loan fund after being a local housing fund. And then sort of fast forward, Anna and I knew each other in Charleston. She worked and actually led that same organization. So we have a long history in working on affordable housing initiatives together. And so I'll pitch it over to you. Yeah.
So I'm Anna Hamilton. I live now in Travelers Rest, South Carolina, just outside of Greenville, but spent the first 20 some odd years of my career in Charleston. So as the Charleston Housing Trust was being launched by Tammy, I was working right out of college at a LIHTC, a nonprofit LIHTC developer. And so really watched and had a pretty good close sideline seat to this fund being born. And then the organization that I was working for became a borrower of our fund.
One of our first loans. Yeah.
First loan, one of them. And then as Tammy said, what was the Housing Trust Fund grew into a statewide CDFI that years later I went to work at and helped it grow from a regional housing trust fund to a statewide CDFI lending for affordable housing, obviously, but small business community facilities and healthy food. My entire life has been in community development in one way or not my entire life, my entire career. But, probably building cities or something. I don't know. Actually, that's not growth playing school. I really wanted to be a teacher. But my entire career has been in community development. So when I've not been in affordable housing, or owner-occupied rehab work, I did a brief stint at Low Country Food Bank as the vice president of community initiatives, handling all the community feeding programs. So working with, local government partners, faith-based partners, social services providers to feed the community. So this work is near and dear to my heart. I was talking to a colleague who's not necessarily in the housing space the other day, and I was like, this is my thing that I love so much. And anytime one of these is about to launch and I get a chance to work on it, I'm like, yes, it's so exciting. It's such a powerful tool. Mm-hmm. It's such a great thing to watch communities do. And so to be here helping you all think through this is exciting for me. This is why I do what I do. This is the good stuff right now.
And I would love, and I know a little bit about your guys' background would be helpful to us, and the work that you do, obviously wearing your commissioner's hat, but also what your passions are and what your background is. So I don't know if you want to just share a little bit, Tiffany, and then Carol.
Well, I was born and raised in Athens, raising my 5 children here, me and my husband. Decided to run for a commission because the seat had reopened. Mm-hmm. And I just thought it would be a great opportunity to represent my community that I was born and raised in. So now I'm the commissioner of that area. But my passion is the same. I just want to make Athens a better place for locals and people that's coming in. And I know housing is really one of those things that's just we need. Yeah. And so, mm-hmm. You say we need it, but there are no learning the ways to be able to implement, because I think when I came in, I was just rah, we need housing. It's there's a process.
I'm a raw person too. I love
Tiffany, we're used to it. We're used to it.
So I'm grateful to be in this room and in this area to be able to learn how I can better serve my community. So
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks. Carol, your
I'm here as commissioner. This is like my second term.
Okay.
And I spent my regular career in the tech school system here in Athens. So this is my retirement gig
Nice.
going on here. So you know, and Athens, I mean, I come from, my parents were school teachers, you know,
Okay.
public school teachers up north, but you know, I come from a very middle class, like, you know, I didn't know private schools, but very middle class. The house was always there, everything there. And you know, I see what's happened in Athens, and I've been here a little over 40 years. But you know, if you think of it, there's been so many changes, and I'm thinking way back to when I first got here and down in like this won't mean anything to you, but down at the other end of Boulevard and everything else. I mean, that was, you know, that's very hot spot, or over by the Navy school. I mean, I looked at the Navy, I was looking at some real estate last night, and I live over on the east side, which is less, it's not in the loop, but the pricing for, you know, it trickles down, but the housing for middle class people has just like gone crazy up, you know, and so it's like, it's just amazing to look at. You know, there's a house like that, it looks like looks a lot worse on the outside, at least. On the outside, but it's like 650,000 over there by the Navy school, and it's just it's a little, you know, unadorned brick ranch house that, you know, it's like, it doesn't look great. So and you realize that that's what's going there. I mean, that's putting the pressure on the, you know, lower income folks in their neighborhoods that were lower income that now are like, you know, it's all just like, there's not enough room for us. So it's anyone who doesn't have enough money is like getting stuck. So seeing that happen in the community, is, you know, I'm here learning, figuring out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, kudos again for you all as commissioners to make this a top priority, and to not only just make it a priority, but to like put money aside to invest in it. Because a lot of folks, like you said, talk about it, and you come in, you're like, where's the money for it? You know, and so to actually invest the money and invest in this process with us to try to get the right model in place, like you were saying earlier, like making sure we're looking at preservation, we're looking at new construction, we're looking at production, we're looking at home ownership and rental. And so we're going to kind of go through a little bit of our process with you all today. And of course, you know, jump in with some questions as well, and try to be conscious of your time. But I know Anna was going to kind of go just so you understand a little bit more in detail of like the different phases of our work. We're in phase 1, and how we'll be with you guys for several months.
10 months.
So I hope you like us. So, you know, so, Anne, you want to go through the process?
Sure,
and jump right in, and
so Tiffany, here's your 10-month, like, we need housing. This is how we're gonna stand this baby up. So phase 1 is, you know, 3-month phase. It's stakeholder education and outreach. So like, this is what we're doing today, what we're gonna be doing tomorrow, really making sure that we are listening to the community, and also making sure that the community understands what a housing trust fund is, and how does it work, and what are the benefits, and what are some common like entity structures. So really this sort of getting grounded in this community, us getting to know you, but you also getting the chance to learn about the housing trust fund models and what's been done regionally. Phase 2 is lending framework and pipeline developments. That's when we'll come back and go deep with the developers in the community, and get an understanding of what they need, what kind of products would be useful to them, because the last thing we want to do is stand this thing up and then no one comes in and borrows the money. We don't want to do that, because we know how desperate the need is. And then start to get an idea of pipeline. So what does the pipeline look like out there in the short, medium, and long term? And then phase 3 is implementation. So what do your loan policies look like? What do your defined products look like? What's the application process? How do you get to this strike fund? Those things come after we have kind of framework. First, the entity established, and then the framework set up, and then there's the process, and then you go forth and you loan out all the
Yeah.
money.
And I think with that will come a lot of recommendations around dedicated revenue streams and like the types of resources, and like Anna was saying, like, again, the application process. And because again, what we don't want to see happen is, okay, you've depleted all your funds and now we got to wait another 3 years to do more projects, right? So thinking about that.
Is there a goal? Do you have like, will you present us with a goal for how big this fund is, or you're like, just keep going for?
Well, and that's part of, I think, these meetings is understanding like what is the actual financial capacity. We've been talking with Courtney just about the legal capacity of what sources we can tap into. Some of this could also mean recommendations for larger policy initiatives. And we can talk more about that. Like, what at the state level should we be considering to open up more resources for you all? But also there's 4 other housing trust funds in Georgia, So I think you're right. Like, we should be coming up with some sort of a goal. I think your first goal was the 5 million, right? From the original study. And so from there, sort of in the next term, like, what's that next level look like? And it'll be tied back to the demand that was outlined in your affordable housing investment strategy. So that would be the goal, is to tie it back to what you've already sort of accepted as a sort of your framework, for sure.
Yeah, and I think also when you're thinking through like different entity types and how this thing could be structured, how does that either hinder or further whatever your goal might be about attracting and leveraging additional
That's exactly what I was.
largely dependent on the entity.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a CDFI, they can tap into different resources. If it's a nonprofit, it can tap into different resources. So it's a matter of which way do we want to direct this? What do we want it to look like? Then we can start to really identifying what other resources could come into it besides not just general funds, but what other revenue sources.
Well, you just used another acronym that I know I should know.
Sorry,
But I
which
forget.
one?
No, that's all right. But it's second time I said I'll just like.
Oh, Community Development Financial.
Yeah.
Institute.
Is that the one where who's the only one in town?
First American
The
Bank.
bank.
Oh, okay. So then I'm thinking about something different, because I thought there was something like where there's also something where East Athens Development is all.
There is CBDO. That's specific to CDBG. See all these acronyms. They are a community business development organization, and that is very specific to community development block grant funding.
Okay, and this one is
This is a CDFI. It's a federal thing.
federal.
It
That's a
is.
federal. And
Yep,
what
it
does
has-
it stand
that's it.
for?
Community Development Financial Institution.
Yep.
So
The
you'll
Department of U.S. Treasury.
And that's why that bank is the one that we're using with the ARPA funds. But I mean, this is pretty basic thing that I've already learned here, because I think, having spent, we put a lot of money in ARPA for this, but the ARPA money had different regulations so that we actually were giving money away.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, because it was a federal
Right,
grant or grant funding that allowed
Us
that
to
type
do
of
that.
activity.
So shifting over to this thing, I mean, it's pretty basic, but somehow I hadn't caught on this, that this is just a loan program. We're
Correct.
setting up a loan program.
Yeah,
That is it.
correct.
We're not giving money away.
and that's what Macon did. Sorry.
Federal government, if we set this up.
It doesn't change our funding. It doesn't change us as an entitlement community continuing to get our CDBG in our home. What we could try to do is look at coordination of, if you're applying for this and you still have a gap, do you want to apply for our money to also
All
layer
right, the what do you call that thing?
the gap financing or the
Capital
The
steps.
capital stack?
Capital stack.
Yeah.
Or as I like to call it, the lasagna of affordable
Yeah,
housing.
right.
Layer upon layer upon
Yeah,
layer upon
right.
layer.
Yeah,
What it
but-
takes.
I mean, we try to keep those separate because
Yeah.
we don't, ours is grant.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing is, ours is always, it's grant, unless y'all tell us otherwise, it's gonna stay a grant, where this is totally different and it's a loan.
Yeah.
Whoever manages this, we don't manage it. We'll continue to manage ours, and whoever we
It's like a
have do
bank.
this,
It's like a bank.
it's like a bank. It's gonna be totally independent of us. We can be a part of it, like maybe an ad hoc board member, but we would not have anything to do with the management of
And
this.
Tiffany, you bring up a really great point, and I think it kind of ties into this sort of next conversation about a little bit more about like what is a local housing trust fund, is exactly that. Like, how can it be the most flexible funding source, right? Because the strings that are attached, and you mentioned the federal government, I saw you
Yeah.
smiling, like it has so many strings and restrictions to it. And so
Mhm.
there's only so many things that you can do with that, where this fund is supposed to be really your most flexible. So you know, what matters for Athens-Clarke and how do you want to address it? That's not dictated by Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Exactly.
So, and the other thing I think in terms of the components, so again, it is a powerful, flexible tool. It's meant to be that. This is why it was recommended. It's why it's a priority for you all, because you recognize the resources that you currently have. And I will give you guys this presentation just so you know, is that you're not able to meet all your needs in affordable housing with the resources that you have. And a lot of that is not within your control because of the federal government or even certain state limitations. And so the other piece of this, I think that is so important, is that it's meant to be a dedicated source of funding. So we do want to try to identify what revenue sources, you know, working with Courtney and legal, that can we tap into that can be committed to this on an ongoing basis. This one-time allocation, general fund money is really important. But as you know, if councils change, your leadership changes, priorities change, and we want to make sure that, like, you know, when all of us, you know, whatever, go to the beach, you know, for our retirement, that this is still in place for our future generation, right? So that we're trying to set this up in a way that is dedicated. And key components to that means that we would have to look at, and you've already looked at this legislation and local ordinances that you would need to put in place to commit those funds, whether it's a percentage of a certain fee, whether it's just a percentage of a certain tax, whether it's bond financing, and we'll talk more about the ways in which local housing trust funds are funded in other places that we'll want to lean into and identify, as well as thinking about leveraging other funding sources like philanthropy, like community benefit agreements with, like, if University of Georgia is doing something and they should be putting money, I mean, whatever the institution is, and thinking about how are we leveraging local, not only business money, but bank money. So thinking about and philanthropy as well. And then of course, you know, we talked about as federal funds decline. I mean, so one, it's about eliminating some of the restrictions that we know we face with federal funds, but we also know that it's not guaranteed, right? We're in a whole different space right now. We know that those funds may or may not be guaranteed. So we need to think locally, how do we solve our own housing crisis? And so this is another reason why these are valuable tools. You have some state restrictions too. It's not just, you know, the fact that we're talking about federal restrictions. And then of course the beauty of it is that you as a commission, you as a community control the decision. So if homeownership is a top priority because you really want to have that next generation of homeownership in the neighborhoods and communities, it could be that's your priority. You guys have identified those three areas, right? Acquisition strike fund, the single family home, and then so you've already kind of identified some of that, which is exciting. And then of course we know that we can also look to leverage funding, and on average it's about $8 for every dollar that a public entity puts in, that other funding come to the table. So it's really exciting to then leverage your guys' public investment for why the tool is so valuable as well. Just a little bit about, oops, I'm doing mine instead of this one. A little bit about the framework. So some of the things that Anna mentioned in like the phases of work we're going to do together is going to be looking at really these 4 areas. And so the next time you see us, we'll be coming back with some recommendations based on our listening and based on the information that we're getting and our research, is how are we going to administer this? Like Melinda has said, this is not something that you guys in housing community development can do capacity wise, legally wise, if you're going to do lending. So there's a lot of reasons why you all can't do it internally. So what is the right structure? And we'll talk a little bit more about some of those examples, but a lot of folks are looking to a nonprofit entity to do that, or an existing organization like the bank you mentioned, that that's something that Make and Bib did. They created their own legal entity and then they partner with someone who does sort of the lending piece. So so we'll have to establish what that administration looks like and adopt that. Program and product, we talked a lot about that. Low interest, you've already done some, right? Deferred interest, you know, 5-year money, 10-year money, 20-year money. Like we'll be identifying all different sorts of products and opportunities, and we'll talk a little bit about what some of those can be, and of prioritizing those. Who's eligible to apply? I think you had asked that question, Tiffany, even in your email, you know, that nonprofit developers, could it be a local government, like, you know, that could also apply, like the housing authorities quasi, they're the only ones legally right now that can do this. And so who's eligible? if there's down payment assistance programs, things like that. So we'll be identifying all of the ways in which people could be eligible and the types of programs that would be priorities. So for example, we may identify that certain neighborhoods are priorities because they're historic legacy neighborhoods and we want to make sure that they're preserved, that we avoid gentrification. You were talking about the pressures in the market. So in Macon, for example, they prioritize certain neighborhoods. And so you might get bonus points if you work in that neighborhood. You might be very interested in sustainable development, you know, in green development. That's just an example. You might get a bonus point. You might serve the low income, like 30% and below. So there's ways in which we can structure these programs and products to really target what the needs are in your community. It's not Atlanta, it's not Savannah, it's not Macon, it's Athens. And so how do we make sure those products meet Athens needs? So
Are these funds ever, are they? I mean, I know they have to be, you know, you're not gonna just sit like someone walks in the door and says, I need some money, and you say, oh, yes, give it there. But are there independent contractors and builders who can apply for these funds? Is there a, you know, how is that included in this? Well, I guess it's under eligibility. Who's eligible?
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But for example, in Macon, and you may talk about this, Anna, a little bit more, but like they wanted to really support some of their local minority developers. And so they were like mom and pop shops that were like a priority for them. So you know, we will structure it however we feel is most important.
So it's not necessarily, I mean, we're not saying yes or no on anything now, but that's an eligibility. You don't have
That's right.
that you don't have to, that's an option that some communities use.
Yes.
In terms of making it really eligible to a lot of local contractors and less.
That's right. So your eligibility requirements might look something like for-profit developers, nonprofit developers, housing authorities. Broad categories like that. And then as to Tammy's point, as you get into talking about how you want to prioritize, you might say, okay, we really, again, we're using the example of Macon. We really want to prioritize local, small, emerging developers. That's important to us. Like we want that capacity in our community without relying on large scale developers from outside of the community coming in. So they did that. They prescribed extra points if you were a small and emerging developer, local. So that's within those eligibility criteria, you can also have priorities.
But there must also, whether it's small or large, there must be some, you know, like credibility thing.
They'll be underwriting.
Oh, there's an underwriting process.
Right.
Yeah.
You know.
You'll have a whole loan policy and procedures manual, and you'll also have underwriting criteria and an application process, which to your point, if I'm an eligible applicant, I'll have a whole series of things that I have to have in place. Like I'm not just like, oh, I have no experience in development, and by the way, give me $1 million.
That's correct. Yeah, we're not
love to do that, you know.
I can be a small and emerging developer and
Never
get priority, but it might be my first development, and therefore I'm going to get loaned $50,000 first to start my project, and then come back for another. So that's all that kind of management capacity and expertise gets analyzed as part of the underwriting process.
And we're going to talk a little bit more about that, Carol, as well, in terms of the next steps. But just to give you,
I want to bring up one more point to your point, because I do think you're bringing up an important nuance, which is you can be eligible to apply, but it doesn't mean you're going to get approved, because there is a set of and we'll work on this in this lending framework, and then in the implementation, there is an objective underwriting criteria that you have to meet in order to be approved for a loan. And if you don't meet that criteria, and there's enough mitigating factor that someone's going to recommend you for approval, that all has to be disclosed and approved.
That's a great
point. So good nuance there. One, in fact, that many lenders don't understand the difference between eligibility and then getting approved and
So like I just contacted this guy who's going to do a little work on my house, right? And he's a handyman. I mean, part of the thing I'm trying to figure out is how reliable, credible, where it fits in. I mean, I was recommended by someone, but he might have that, but he might not have everything together with his finances to actually be able to, he's eligible to apply, but when he goes to fill out the materials, it's like, I don't have this, I don't have that. I don't have-
Yeah.
Which is where us, and I don't want to get too far off of our path, but I think it's an important discussion. This is where a strong community partner, or having this thing administered by an entity that has the capacity to offer technical assistance to borrowers
Right.
to help them get ready
Right.
to apply. So in the case of this gentleman that you're talking about, like, you know, he might have his company financials like on a legal pad in his dining room
Right.
somewhere, you know, so he might need help. Which, you know, at least mine are on an Excel spreadsheet, but I'm not far from the legal pad in the dining room. But there's, you know, there are organizations, and certainly CDFIs as part of their mission provide technical assistance to help folks get ready to access capital. Who might need help with, like, okay, how do I use QuickBooks to build a balance sheet and an income statement? Also, what is a balance sheet?
Yeah.
So,
Kind of like the thing we were talking about with, again, back with ARPA, with the work we do with different nonprofits and.
Yeah.
and-
Capacity building.
yes.
There we go. Another word for our jumble.
So Savannah, for example, Savannah's housing fund is administered through a nonprofit CDFI that was a long-established housing organization. They themselves are a developer, but they do a lot of capacity building work through their owner-occupied rehab program with contractors to help with your handyman guy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they'll start them off with that, and kind of they work with them through the process. And what their director told me was, we kind of say, like, hey, you know, first of all, do right by the home buyer, you know, don't abscond with the money. But second of all, you're going to make some money if you partner with us and do a
Right.
really good job. We'll keep you. And so they kind of work first to make sure that the person is reliable, but then they'll start to work with them on actually like building that development capacity.
And I think that's a good point about going back to why this local fund is so flexible and creative, is because it can really address that, which is if there's technical assistance that's needed, if there's capacity building that's needed, so that you are building your own Athens capacity to deliver on this work. It's great if you have if you got a ton of money, we have $10 million, but nobody's there to do the developments. That's not going to help you either, right? So I think it's a really great point. And within this framework, we will be diving into that a little bit deeper. And then the fourth kind of piece of the framework is obviously the revenue source. And so that's going to be where we look at what is legally an option here in Georgia, what's legally an option, what's politically favorable for Athens. You know, we could say, hey, increase a millage or something that may be like, oh, no, we're not going to do that. Or it could be, is it a local option? Is it certain options? So we'd be looking at all those different revenue sources to then recommend a diverse set of revenue sources as well that would be dedicated. So I want to be conscious of we're okay on time, right? Yeah, good. So, and we talked a little bit about this, but what I've tried to do is just break this down in from those 4 pieces of framework. Again, what's the lead agency? There's a lot of different ways to do this. We've talked a lot about that. One of the best options has really been looking at a nonprofit CDFI loan fund that gives you the most flexibility. We've seen that a lot in most of the ones in Georgia, as well as in North and South Carolina. What's the oversight? So typically, as we talked about, you talked about the lending process, there is a loan committee. So that would be made up of, again, we'll make some recommendations. You all will have some recommendations. The team will have recommendations on who sits on that loan committee, have the expertise to evaluate these projects. They would make recommendations. So there's an entire process in which, to your point, making sure that yes, folks are eligible, but they also meet the criteria to actually receive the money and can responsibly manage the money in the project.
And I think, to your point, sorry to interrupt, but that there actually is a set of criteria that is applicable to everyone. That's clear and transparent and objective, so that the community understands how these decisions are getting made. So it's important to be transparent and accountable with this stuff.
Absolutely, great. Yeah. And then again, we talked about this somewhat. How are we going to deliver the financing, the funding that we have available? And we've talked about a variety of revolving loan type products. Some of them that could be low interest deferred. You may do a down payment assistance type program that is forgivable over time. And that's something that I know is for your home ownership could be a priority as well. So it really depends on the goals that we set out here in Athens-Clarke County. This is just a snapshot of the types of products. You've got your three kind of main categories, but even within those categories, we'll be looking at very specific types of products. So again, a pre-development loan. So that early money, which is most banks, most credit unions, most financial institutions do not provide those. That's the hardest money to get, right? I have an idea. I need to do some land assessments, right? I need to get an architect, you know, a market study. Like the banks are like, oh, okay, come to us when you need construction financing, right? When it's less
land you can put up.
when it's less risky. So a lot of times, like these loan funds do a lot of that pre-development lending, which is really important then to get them to the banks for the financing. We talked about acquisition, obviously to pay purchase prices, closing costs. These are some of the eligible programs. We talked about the low income housing tax credit program, another acronym, and ways in which you can leverage that program. And we talked about bridge and construction. So maybe there is a small developer who's buying 2 or 3 homes, going to rehabilitate them and maybe put them for sale. Like that's a great way you could get like a couple $100,000 in a line of credit. And then you're recycling those funds with that partner or developer is another. A mini perm is like a mini permanent financing. So it might be a shorter term than like a 30-year. It could be 5 to 10 years. A lot of times we see those with some of the larger type products because we also want to take into account, we don't want all of your funds to be out for 15, 20, 30 years. Because I don't know about you, but I'm not sure we'll all be around this table in 20 years. Maybe we'll be retired or but I know. But we can't wait 50. It's, you know, Tiffy, to what you said, like we can't wait 15 years for all of our funds to recycle back. So we have to, we'll also recommend a balance for you guys. Like, okay, maybe this percentage of funding goes into longer term projects, you know, this percentage of money goes into shorter term. So that way you've got those recycled funds coming in. So we don't want to negate the fact that you want to do those rental longer term projects, but you also need to have money for those smaller and other projects.
Right, unless there's a developer, every chance they get is gonna say, we want 30-year money at 0% interest.
Yeah.
And so we've got to set up.
Grant that, I'm
Right,
you know,
yeah.
no, we
Grant
grant.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
funny. I had on our product thing, you know, it's like ask developers what kind of product traits would be useful for them. No grants, like
Yeah.
because they will do it every time.
Exactly.
But it's important to have a suite of products that set you up for that good balance for your sake, so that you can revolve the money. But also, like we were saying, like this pre-development money is fairly short term and it's the hardest to get. So to really support all stages of development, it's important that those products be set up properly.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a snapshot of common sources of dedicated revenue. I know that you guys are already doing sort of the fee in lieu of, or you call it, what do you call it, Melinda? The IZ?
Payment in lieu of.
Payment in lieu of.
Voluntary inclusionary zone.
Yeah, so I know that so that's basically a developer paying you a fee so that you can then use that for affordable housing. So you guys have been quite successful with trying or getting developers to do that. Most common are real estate transfer type fees or taxes. So as real estate so in South Carolina, for example, the State Housing Finance Authority has a state housing fund. For every like deed recording fee, they get a percentage of that and it goes into like a state fund. That's an example of a state fund. Some people have a local real estate transfer fee that they can use. I don't think that's we need to look. I don't think Georgia allows that currently by law. So we'll be looking at all the legal aspects of which sources that are currently available. Those that, hey, you know what, maybe we want to tackle a policy initiative with some other folks to maybe get that into the Georgia state law. So we'll be like recommending all those types of sources. General funds, you guys have already been doing that, which is wonderful, looking at those opportunities. I know hospitality and tax and accommodations tax is not currently eligible for affordable housing in Georgia. But it doesn't mean it couldn't be something that people advocated for. That just recently happened in South Carolina, where they had some legislation that now allows for accommodations tax to be used for affordable housing. And Anna's going to talk a little bit about that when she talks about some of the models that we looked at as well. So again, you also use recovery money, so sometimes those funds come in. So again, this is just a suite of things that we'll be looking at to see what is allowable per law here in Athens and in Georgia.
Well, the bonds, I mean, bonds are basically loans. So what, I don't understand that. Like the government would borrow money to put in here
Mhm.
and then we'd be paying it back from,
Repayment,
From repayments.
from loan repayments.
Yeah.
right, but we'd be. I mean, I need a full class on bonds.
If you,
to be honest.
if you borrow off of bonds and then you loaned it out, I would assume those would probably be your short-term, quick turnaround loans.
Mhm.
So the money would be there immediately. You put it out for short-term loans, you get the payment back and you pay back on the loan.
And we have several models that do that. I mean, like Charlotte, Asheville, Charleston. So a lot of folks use the bond financing capability to seed or to
Okay.
do, but to your point, it does have to be repaid. So typically it is more short term. Usually there's it's a lot of times it's rental or it's acquisition resale, and then those funds come back. So it's been a very successful tool because local governments have that ability to do that, which you don't have a lot of sources, right? So, yeah.
Okay, you mean, so we'd be paying it back from
The
the
loan.
developments that are going out,
Yeah.
so, okay, so we'd be borrowing money to lend, and then when we get the money back from the people we lend it to, we'd be paying back.
Right,
Okay,
right.
it's a lot of.
So it's just, the liability would be on the government because
Okay.
we're the ones providing the bond, but
Okay.
with the underwriting and when you're, when you're doing good lending practices, you get that money back, it's going straight back. But
Yeah.
it's just a quick way to really infuse that fund with money
Okay,
that you wouldn't have with general funds budget.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we've got like I said, we'll have several models. And if we do think like that's a viable option, like that's commissioners like that idea, the community is politically would be interested in that. There's a lot of resources we can tap into when we get into that phase 3 of like implementation and recommendations. But it is a viable source.
Tiffany, if I could just say one thing here, and so I'm so happy to have y'all's help on this because this is a very like a complex area.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
And I'm sure you get a lot of questions about
Tons of questions. And in fact, that's what I was going to bring up. And I haven't vetted this. I'm just putting it as an idea that somebody in planning recently talked to me about whether like the fee for STRs could be pumped into this. Sort of like it makes sense from a policy standpoint, right? But,
right.
Mhm.
So just
Yeah.
that's another option. Sort of consider.
Their fees for STRs are locally generated, and by law you can do them.
Right.
So then
They're
you
gonna
can
have to be used for the registration program to.
you can't do registration in Georgia though, right?
Right.
You said.
That's right. No rental registration.
Well, this
Yeah.
would be different.
Unless they're
Licensing-
voluntary.
Sorry.
So
Voluntary. Yeah,
I think
exactly.
I meant to say licensing program. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. We don't use
But-
the word rental.
Yes, but for example, like Hilton, I did a lot of work in Hilton Head, and they have a lot of short-term rentals. And actually, they got way out of their control, and now they're trying to kind of pull it back. And they were looking at this as a solution, is using some of those funds. But like you said, every law is
Right.
different. So we'll be looking at we're gonna look under every rock, every possible law we can find to make sure we've got a good suite of, because you don't just want one, you want
Right.
multiple ones, right? So we
And
definitely.
it could be that if, something like that, it could be split, that a certain percentage of
Right.
that
Yeah.
goes to
Right.
this and the other
Yeah.
covers whatever other fees you needed or whatever
Right, the program,
project
the
you needed.
licensing
So it's
Yes,
just,
the
you
not
could look at percentages of certain eligible things to go toward this.
The
Gotcha. Yeah,
enforcement,
yeah.
the enforcement program.
Right.
Yeah. Did you have a question? I'm sorry.
Could we also use our SPOS to put money in here, the special purpose?
I think it depends on how you do the
allocation.
how you
of
do the
SWAT.
ask. I mean,
Yeah.
how you make the ask for SWAT.
Loss can't be done as a loan, so no,
Well, there you go.
Okay.
we found that out.
What about so local option
Yes.
tax can be, or no, it cannot be.
Well, that's what he's basically talking
Okay.
about. Yeah.
Okay.
We have it and it's for very specific types of activities to support, some of it is allocated to support affordable housing.
Okay.
But we were looking at using SPOS as a loan instead of the HDF for one of those
Okay.
two that were awarded.
Yeah.
and we were
Yeah,
Oh, so the.
got legal and
we
it's
should
like,
dig into that a little bit more, because I
Yeah.
know like what's it called, float, or like you float a local
yeah.
option tax, like flop,
And so
that,
floss,
that could be, but
I just,
floss,
it's so funny. I just wrote myself.
floss.
What are
That's
flo-
another
what's
acronym.
floss
Yes.
supposed to be used for? And I just looked it up because I thought it has to be used for property tax relief. Like we
Oh,
don't
it has
have
to
floss here yet. We haven't put that
Yeah,
reference.
but that's where our mayor he has this
So it's a
program
yeah, the idea of
suggested to use some of the money from
We
flood.
need to really look into it because it's supposed to be allocated to property tax relief.
I think
Right,
that
right, I didn't, yeah.
Georgia law, we need to look into Georgia law, because I feel like it depends on how it's structured, and like you have to do it as a referendum, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just became like everybody would just be going referendum
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
now for it.
So I think the point is let's investigate it. Let's not
Yeah,
leave it
yeah.
on the table, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
it's
the
a
mayor's
brand new-
suggestion was that it would go for property relief, but then instead of, then you just use more.
I
general
see, because
fund.
then it releases some general
Yeah,
funds that
yeah.
could be.
But to bring it back to SPOS, I think where you
SPLOST
can use
law.
that is it cannot be allocated as a loan. But if somebody were looking at a loan for this and it's affordable housing and they want to go to SPLOST and apply for a certain amount of money to support infrastructure for the development,
Right,
then they
right.
could do that. So it would be a capital stack
It's a
type of,
tool in the toolbox.
correct,
And
Okay.
it's leveraging.
correct.
Yeah. So that would also add to your
It's an
ability.
ingredient in the lasagna.
It is, yes, it is a layer of the lasagna.
She likes lasagna. I like layered cakes.
I like both.
Right? So, and then, so we have started to do some, to your point about Georgia, Courtney, and, is we have been looking at obviously what's currently happening in Georgia. So we are digging into Invest Atlanta and what's happening in Atlanta. We know they manage, and Anna's going to talk about multiple funds. Make and Bid, we know very well. We helped them get structured. They started with $7-something million.
Wow.
Of ARPA money.
ARPA.
Yeah, that's the.
They're using ARPA.
And then from there, they've got to determine. And so just so you know, we are looking at these specifically. I know Marquita and I, we've talked about other ones that you guys have looked at. And so the good news is you've got some good traction. And again, I think from a policy standpoint, if you guys ever did want to go to the General Assembly, you call it General Assembly here, right? Okay. I never, like in Chicago, it's aldermen, not commissioners,
Right.
council
Yeah.
members. So that, what a great group of people
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
can also go with you,
Lots
you
of
know?
help.
So I think that's exciting. Because I know I'm working in Savannah, in East Savannah, and I know Senator Mallow, Derek there, he's been talking about trying to get some more funding for affordable housing in the General Assembly. So that would be possibly a longer term play.
Right. And just on the art, but clarify again, because we're talking about this and maybe to someone in the public, but even for myself, like with the SPLOS, we use that for affordable housing, but for the infrastructure that's needed around it. And we did dedicate ARPA funds for affordable housing. We just did not dedicate them for a housing fund.
Right.
So that's.
Right, and,
Yeah.
and what Make and Bid is gonna have to do is get that money out quickly,
Mhm.
and then, yeah, they're on the same deadline everybody else is.
Yeah.
So they have to get that money out quickly, and then repayment is no longer ARPA, and that money
That's
recycles.
interesting, okay.
So that's what they did, to get theirs up and running, they started with ARPA, but they gotta loan that money out and then get it back, and then it's no
And
longer
then it's like a
ARPA.
wash, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Make it eat home.
The more we recycle this money, the better, because then it gets cleaner and cleaner every
Exactly.
time. It's like laundering, you know?
That was my thought too, Ted.
Yeah.
But it's legal laundering.
But
Legal laundering.
It's not used for it.
I- All the squashes are notes. Enemy of I know. Listen, my husband's an attorney as well. I hear you. You're like, yeah. Well, and I know we were diving a little bit into some of the models that we've been looking at, but I know Anna wanted to do a little bit more digging and share with you kind of with the interviews and the market research a little bit. We'll answer, I think, some more questions about what we're learning as well, and may also spur more questions from you about how these other housing funds are structured. So
Yeah, so these are just, kind of back to our like $1 million question about like, how's this thing going to be structured? And so I need examples, like give me an example, show me an example. How do these various entity types work? What are the pros and cons of each? What's what's worked well, what hasn't? So, first example is administered by a unit of local government. So, we looked and spoke with Asheville, North Carolina. They've got a fund that was established in 2001. They have 2 full-time staff people in their housing department. So they actually split their housing and community development department so that one side of it administers federal funding and the other side is around local funding. So they've got two FTEs there. It is now financed or funded by bonds, seeded back in the day with general funds. They just in 2024 passed another $20 million affordable housing bond that's funding the trust fund. There's widespread political support for it in Asheville. Like residents, elected officials alike agree that like affordable housing is the #1 issue driven there. And this was even pre-Helene. This was true. Driven by tourism, like that they're trying to keep their town livable for the people who live there. One thing that came to mind for me when we were talking about the importance of a dedicated source is, had they not had this bond financing available because of Helene, like it to quote Sasha in Asheville, it wrecked our tax base.
Yeah.
So they would not have had any extra money to put into an affordable housing fund, but thank God they had this bond.
How long
So
did they linger? I'm sorry to ask.
yeah,
I'm not even here to ask questions, but how long did they sort of linger in the general funds before they started issuing bonds?
years.
Okay, so like
Years. I think the
20 years
first
or so.
bond was passed in like 2016, I want
Okay,
to
so
say.
15 years or so.
Yeah, so it was
Okay.
a long time.
Yeah.
It was a long time.
Yeah.
So of this $20 million bond, they gave 10 million of it went to this Western North Carolina Housing Fund, which is a partnership between the Dogwood Foundation, which is a Western North Carolina, philanthropy, and self-help. And so they put that money in the fund for a couple of reasons.
Self-help is a community development financial institution.
Big national.
Just
Yeah,
so
thank
you know,
you.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Tammy.
That's our acronym.
Not everybody is in this world. Self-help administers a number of housing funds around predominantly the Southeast. So like Wake County and Durham. Why am I drawing a blank on the other ones that they do? Anyway, there's a handful of them in the Southeast. So they have this model by which self-help handles the underwriting, the approvals, the servicing, and then they can leverage additional dollars.
And they're a credit union, so similar to the bank, like self-help can leverage some of their funding too.
Yeah. So $10 million goes into this Western North Carolina Housing Fund, primarily for 2 reasons. The first is they were kind of the first money into this fund, so they're going to go out and then leverage, and this fund is then going to go out and leverage an additional $40 million with the 10 that came from Asheville Housing Fund. The second reason was staffing. She said, we just don't have the staff to administer these $20 million in bonds. She said, what you said, it's like a mini bank.
Yeah.
It's like a mini bank. And where they're struggling with staffing is sort of on the portfolio management and servicing piece. She's like, these loans, somebody like, you got to process payments, you got to make sure people are compliant. Like there's this whole thing on the back end that they just don't have the staffing capacity to do. This was when I asked them about challenges, this was the named challenge.
So it's probably a good thing that we're thinking, you're already already thinking about doing this internal would be really a lot of strain.
Yeah.
Getting the right partner who already has this infrastructure. Like you guys are way ahead of that conversation, which is great.
And I asked her, I said, would it ever move out of the city? And she said, it's essentially council loves it so much and it's sat in the city for so long that she thinks that's pretty unlikely. So they're trying to get creative about how to efficiently use and deploy the money with minimal pressure on staff.
And so this funding to the self-help partner.
It does just that, does just that. And then they will sort of, the remaining 10 will be used for single family work, and it'll just kind of slowly be deployed. So interesting, very interesting. They have a 3-person housing and community development committee that does sort of the initial recommendations for loans, and then the loans are all approved by council. They outsource underwriting support because they don't have the capacity or the expertise in house to do it. So they typically contract out for that. Who's next? Buford Jasper. Tammy knows a thing or two about this one. Established in 1922.
Wow.
What did you say? Established in 2022. This one emerged out of a CDFI, and Tammy can talk a lot about that. 8 jurisdictions made a 10-year funding commitment. Not necessarily a model I think that would be easy to administer, but one that exists nonetheless. The nonprofit has 2 full-time staff people. They need another. They need more staff, particularly around construction management and administration and compliance. They were one who was successful in advocating for accommodations tax in South Carolina to be used for affordable housing. So that is now in place.
They can use up to 15% of their local aid tax and 15% of their state aid tax. And that was led by Senator Tom Davis, that's his area in the Beaufort Hilton Head area. And so that was really a success. So again, if we're talking about eventually looking at larger policy initiatives, that could be something that we look to model.
Yeah.
We can do it in South Carolina, we certainly can do it in Georgia.
Right. And I
Right?
can say too, thank you for bringing that up again.
Yeah.
Asheville does something similar. It's not necessarily accommodations tax, but if a hotel wants to come in and not have to request approval from council, they have to donate to a fund that supports either affordable housing or their reparations fund. So that's how they're kind of using those, that sort of this like influx of hotels coming in to support people who actually live in.
You guys have quite a bit of
Y'all probably have a similar.
hotels.
Yeah. Yeah. So this Buford Jasper has a 17-member board with an oversight committee of all of the jurisdictions that invested in the fund. And I think and the oversight committee is actually separate from the executive committee. It's in my humble opinion, to me, feels like somewhat of a cumbersome governance structure. And the oversight committee can actually override the actions of the board. Now, it's not happened yet, but that possibility exists. So again, something that is an example, not something necessarily that I am recommending you consider. It feels really, like I said, cumbersome and confusing about who actually has, power to approve things. Just like seems like an unnecessary structure. But that's how they've decided to do it. They are just now starting to pursue grant funding to help grow and sustain the organization. Again, they have 2 full-time employees. They offer both loans and grants. So let me tell you about some of the advantages, the named advantages of this structure was that the jurisdictions the invested jurisdictions like that it is its own separate entity. It gives those jurisdictions a very tangible, concrete way to say, look, this is how we're addressing affordable housing in our community. There's this housing fund. We give money to it. We're on this oversight committee. It also has taken the pressure off of some of the elected officials and the jurisdictions when developers come in and want to really make sure they get a deal made. It's like, no, this entity you've got to go to the trust. They have an established, lending process with objective criteria that you have to follow. This is not like
and it doesn't get voted. The loans don't get voted on by
because
correct.
The board
goes to the board,
right. Full board. Yeah.
The board, they have a loan committee that evaluates, and then they present those to the nonprofit board. But to your point, it takes the pressure off the council or commissioners of like getting all these personal asks, like, can't you help me get my project right? You know, no, there's a vetted process, and then our nonprofit entity leads that process.
Yeah, and having that entity do that, where your voice gets heard is in the IGA. It's in that agreement with our money. This is what we want you to do with it. This is how it's expected to be used. And then you let them take care of it, and it doesn't have to come back in front of you every time somebody wants a loan. But you go in with confidence that IGA is ensuring that what you've agreed needs to happen is what happens.
Yeah. And then, Tammy, I don't know if you want to talk about it kind of being born out of a CDFI.
Yeah, so the way that they were launched is, so they did set aside they also set aside initial ARPA money to get it, everybody pitched in a certain percentage, each jurisdiction did. But they did not have a legal entity yet. And so similar to what we're talking about here, they brought in Community Works, which I was the CEO there at the time, and we were a statewide loan fund. And then we helped them to launch, get it up and running, do the first pilot lending, did the underwriting, all that.
You had
We
a
did
staff person too, right?
We hired a staff person just for that area since we were in Greenville. So within 2 years, they were already underway, and then they created the legal entity. So it really helped us accelerate, to your point, like how to get these resources out, how to get the infrastructure up and running by partnering with this third entity. And so like you guys are thinking about with the partner bank here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had one kind of outward facing, external facing staff person in boots on the ground, so to speak, but then Community Works with its sort of back office support could help manage the loan process,
underwriting,
loan committee, underwriting, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Use other people's money and other people's talents if you can. That's leverage, right?
Megan, our friends just down the road, established in 2023 with ARPA funding, $7.5 million. And obviously Tammy and I helped them launch their fund. They already had a nonprofit entity and a board set up when we got there. They were like, we got it. Also, we've got a loan. And we were like, whoa, like, hold on. Let's talk about what the process looks like. They were very, we need housing. We've got a loan.
The commission meeting going.
So we actually it was interesting because our scope of work almost like flipped as a result of the fact that they had this like really what I'll call like a hot loan sitting in their hands that they really wanted to make. So what is like phase 2 and 3 for y'all became phase 1 for them, because we were like, oh, you gotta have like a letter of intent and like a scoring process.
We had a lot to catch up on.
Yeah, we had to catch them up. So we got right to work on theirs. Theirs is such a great example too of, I think, and you've heard us bring this up over and over. They did this really cool like threshold criteria, scoring criteria that was totally reflective of their local priorities. So you've heard us talking about local developers. They had priority neighborhoods. They wanted the projects that the fund invested in to be within a certain distance of like other redevelopment areas, so that so that everything was kind of complementing, all of their resources were complementing each other. And then there were the more common ones, like, you got more points if you had more experience, or if you were going to target the lowest of income for housing units. And so they did not, when we got there, they did not have a staff person. They had an entity, but it was run by the board and largely run by the guy who was running the land bank. And they were all pretty desperate to get a staff person. So that was part of our work, was helping them create this job description. And so that they could go out and hire someone, which they did. They now have an executive director.
When you guys are talking about the points and everything else, does that imply that there's like, okay, we're doing round 1, we're giving out loans, and there's an application process between, I don't know, September 1st and December 30th, and at that point we'll evaluate all of them. They're not coming in like when I go to the bank,
Right.
it's just me in the bank.
We'll have to
Are
decide
they
that.
competing? That's one of the
that.
things that's decided.
Yeah, Bacon, they did, this was part of like an LOI process. And then there was
Letter of intent.
letter of intent. Thank you. Your acronym list.
Yeah.
Letter of intent process where then, they were scored. But certainly, if you are just going to have kind of just like when you go to the bank and you fill out a loan application, if that's the model that y'all decide you want, you can do things like reflect your priorities in maybe like an interest rate reduction, or something like that. Where
How
it's like,
quickly
well,
the money
we're
would
gonna
Well, and
get
it
first, or-
goes
yeah,
back to eligibility. So
Yeah.
it's similar to what we do with CDBG. You gotta have a threshold.
right.
So you have this rating tool based on your
Mhm.
application, and you gotta meet the minimum threshold for them to consider that loan.
Right.
And we were talking about earlier, it's possible to create a model where you have two annual competitive LIHTC loan applications, because they do the 4% application and then they do the 9%, 2 different times. So you might only open that money up twice a year competitively. But we may decide that the single family in the acquisition is on an ongoing
Basis.
basis where if you have identified a project and a property, then you go in and you start that
And that'd be
initial
like,
process.
when you're talking about the points, you'd have to say, well, if you don't have, like, you have to have 60 and above points to.
Yeah, for them to
Right.
even consider it.
Consider it.
And then they do the underwriting.
Okay.
Right.
And if
right.
it looks like it's a feasible, then they come up with the loan terms. And once that's agreed, it's got to go to the loan committee to approve.
Yeah.
And then once they do that, so it would be that, but you got to come in and meet that minimum threshold in order to even move
Right.
forward
Yeah.
with it.
Right.
It's a great, that's a great question, though. It's
Yeah.
exactly like how the funds would be made available to the public or to the developers. But yeah, so that would all need to be decided.
Hammered out.
Yep.
That's what this
That's
whole,
what
this
this
is
And when
what
we
this
meet
is.
with developers, we're gonna get some, like the people that would actually be doing these projects, they're gonna give us a lot of feedback on that too. Like, it'd be great if it was like during the LIHTC process, or if it was open rolling, or if it was,
Yeah.
you might want to, even when we get the whole structure set up, like you might want to do kind of a celebration and a launch.
Right.
And we celebrate that the fund is open
Yeah.
for application, and like we use that as a way to brand it and market it and really get excitement around it. And then it's maybe an open rolling or a certain round.
Right.
So,
Macon partners with neighborhood lending partners on their back office work, like underwriting and servicing and those kinds of things. So to actively like manage the portfolio. And neighborhood lending partners is an organization that primarily works in Georgia and Florida, usually with units of local government to help them administer housing.
have you ever heard of them?
Y'all, when you brought it up, when we met with you the first time, that was the first time I'd ever heard of it.
Yeah.
And, that, I think that's why, if you don't use a CDFI, then this is something you need to consider, is you've got to partner with someone who can provide
Yeah.
the underwriting and looking at all that.
Portfolio
If you have a CDFI, I think that
gotta
is,
do it.
they are the ones that can do the
That's-
underwriting. So it really depends on the model that you decide to go with, of what needs you have.
Yeah, and then don't forget too, it's the underwriting, and then it's the whole life cycle of the loan. So like,
Yeah. the
who's
management.
watching the thing to make sure what happens when a loan becomes delinquent? Who's calling the borrower? Who's going to shore up the collateral? Who's going to make a site visit and check? So it's like that whole loan administration piece. And this is what Sasha in Asheville said. She said it is nitty gritty work that lasts the life of the loan.
Yep.
And that understood, like, so just that's a lot of staff capacity burn, and sort of a lot of capacity required there, particularly as your portfolio grows. But maybe not such a big deal if you only have
right.
2 loans in there to the housing authority, who has their own sort of machine behind it. But if you start getting a lot of mom and pop developers, or if you get some even larger developers but who are maybe newer at this and don't understand affordability requirements, and then all of a sudden they're out of compliance, it's like this whole it's a lot to manage. It is a lot to manage. So they have outsourced that.
Yeah, and they pay a fee for that, correct?
They do.
Yeah, they do.
Mhm.
Yeah, usually there's a servicing fee or
Yeah.
an origination fee that then goes to the partner.
Yeah, so essentially, if you decide not to use the CDFI and you have a nonprofit managing it, they have to outsource it. They're gonna have to, some of that revenue or some of that money that's in that pot has to go
Right.
to pay for that managing entity.
Gotcha.
And do you guys like present, what are acceptable, good rates to go to the administration of this? Fund rather than the actual lending out. I mean, all of these people, the staff, everything. I mean, is there, if you're using 50% of it for the administration, what is the range? Like,
Yeah, you
that's-
shouldn't.
No, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
just using that number, but is there something you're looking for in this? Like when you're doing this, like we're using 10% of it to administer it is a really good, whatever, administration percentage rate.
I think that we'll look at
Yeah.
examples and what they invest in,
Industry
like for
standards, right,
ours,
what are the
one of our funding sources, we use 10%.
Right.
One is 20%. So it's a matter of looking at what's normal with
Right,
this
right.
and what percentage of that is reasonable.
Right, and I guess
Those.
that's even it, if we're doing this, it's new, talking to the public. People want to go, I want every penny of that used
Yeah.
for affordable housing, and to be able to confidently say, in the industry, running things like this requires that.
Yeah.
Like you gotta have someone who's checking up on the nitty gritty of the loans, but following up and,
Right.
and an acceptable standard for the profession or whatever is 10% or
Yes.
whatever.
Well, and you always have a startup that only a certain percentage of the money coming from ACC Gov, general funds, or that revenue source, only a percentage of that can be used. But then any other revenue sources they manage could also go toward their administration costs.
Mhm.
So you can confidently go in and say, okay, somebody's got to manage this. Somebody's
Right.
got to do the work. And 10% of our funding is going to pay to support that salary. And then they'll use other funds to support whatever
Mhm.
difference.
Yeah.
Right. So like in the example of self-help, they, and this is from when we worked with Megan, but at that time they were not they did not have a fee structure because what they're gonna do is they're taking the money from the municipality, which is loaned to them at, 0% for 20 or 30 years. But then they loan that money out with an interest rate that covers their costs.
Right,
So that's one
to
example of that.
market things that aren't.
Right,
Yeah.
to
Other
cover the
other
underwriting, the
products that they have.
servicing, the monitoring, that piece. They're paying, and also they're self-help and they're gigantic.
Yeah.
But that's how they're paying themselves for doing that and generating that revenue is
But-
off of the interest.
It's a good question, and I'm sorry, Tiffany, go ahead.
Oh, no.
Oh, my.
No, I was just gonna ask, what was the name of the entity from Florida neighborhood?
Lending partners.
So they are CDFI.
Yeah.
They are, yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they were in the process of being certified or something. Yeah. Yeah. We've worked with George. I can't think of his last name. He's got a hard
Yeah,
one.
I met someone here, they came here for a meeting.
Okay.
and, she said that they're now CDFI.
Okay, great. Yeah. So they could be another partner opportunity. But I think, Carol, to your point, like we would be evaluating, like you said, like what is the industry? Is it 10%? Is
Yeah.
it that the fact is that if the CDFI is doing it, they're really just earning the money on the loans that they do, right? Versus like getting an administrative fee, right? So yeah, we would evaluate all that.
And I will say we're seeing an increase in the CDFI industry of CDFIs that are providing servicing for a fee to outside entities. So I think it's a really good time to ask that question because as just given some of the economic and political uncertainty right now, CDFIs are starting to get real creative about how they're going to generate revenue. That's one way that they're doing it. They know they have this asset, which is their staff capacity in their systems. So we're starting to see that. So it's a good time to ask that question.
And I think the other piece is when you we know we have a partner already and we're going to meet with them and we want to leverage that relationship, especially since they're local. But if you decide like you could do a request for proposals for a partner as well, if that was something that you wanted to do to look at like all the options that are out there. But if you have a local partner that you really like, sounds like they're doing a good job with the ARPA money, then we might just want to leverage them. Just lost
Hey,
it.
you wanna do that? You want me to, just, I'll start talking and you can interrupt when you think of it.
What did you just say?
I was talking about an
Partner.
RFP I was talking about your partner that you're currently managing your ARPA funds, which is the bank.
It'll come back.
Okay.
Just as soon as you remember, just interrupt me. So Savannah seated, with an investment from the city of Savannah, who remains their largest donor today. They are this fund is administered by Community Housing Services Agency, which is a nonprofit. I think it was established in the late 80s. They got their CDFI certification in 2017. This is literally a line on their balance sheet. It is not a separate entity. It is not its own thing. It is a program administered by this organization. They are very flexible, and they use the fund as a way to raise money to support housing efforts. They are themselves a larger sort of housing organization. So for example, they had a donor who wanted to do something to address homelessness in Savannah. So through their development arm, they took this donor's money into the trust fund and used it to develop 39 tiny homes, which then they sold to the housing authority. So they've done things like work with United Way. United Way will put money into the fund and then they'll do rental assistance with it. Like very flexible, not necessarily a list of defined products that I could see or that was communicated to me. In fact, if you looked at my interview notes, when I asked what products they offer, it's just like this
Long list
a
of
very
programs.
long list of programs and donors.
And I
but-
guess they're reacting to what the market
it's a
needs are,
good
you know.
example of flexibility and like reacting quickly to the needs of the community because but my background is lending and lending operations is a big piece of it, and I really love a defined set of products. Like that's just the bias I bring to the table. I'm like was sitting on my hands, but it's working for them and they've raised a lot of money and they have
I remember
okay go.
two things. Make a bid. They charge an app fee, right? And a processing fee?
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, so that's one way.
And
to
that's
generate
normal.
income.
That's pretty normal.
As far as that is concerned, it's one of those things where the money that's coming directly from us is defined to be used this way. It doesn't mean that the HTF can't flex and grow
Correct.
as they're gathering other resources externally. They could possibly add to
Yes.
the types of activities that they fund. So, when you're talking about this end product, it's not always necessarily going to be just this. It can grow.
It can.
I would hope that it'd be more structured
Yeah.
than what you were just talking about. But it could still,
Savannah isn't watching us.
they could still
They're doing a great job.
expand what they're doing outside of the money that's coming from ACC Gov.
Yeah.
Correct. As an example, in Savannah, the port and the hospitals want down payment assistance for their employees. So guess where they're going? Housing fund. They're going to put money in the housing fund. They want it to be used for down payment assistance. And important to remember too that the organization in which this fund sits is pretty high capacity when it comes to housing, and so they can do that because they have the staffing capacity. They do leverage the city's staff.
Does that have to be though, like in Savannah? I mean, does that have to be all affordable or lower income? I mean, like with the port, there are probably the down payment assistance or something or other. Does it have to fit in some sort of like income, or is it just in general?
Set the parameters.
Just become like a housing, like a way to funnel money. Like I have, we have Mesner coming in here, or Meisner, sorry, right there. And they have a lot of employees, and they're saying the average wage is going to be 80,000 or something like that. So they could have a down payment assistance program run through this fund that would help people buy houses for 400,000. And is that something that's that's something that Savannah would be doing? We're not necessarily doing it.
If we did it, that would be considered an outside source.
Right.
And
Yeah.
Right, so it wouldn't be managed by our money, so it would be their money to do with.
Correct.
But what they could possibly do is when we're designing the program, we could say that the max that they would operate is up to maybe 150 LMI for workforce.
Right. So because they would be using the staff and the
Because I mean,
capacity.
they
you
may
know,
make
like-
$80,000, but if there are 4 or 5 of them, that 80,000 doesn't.
Right, isn't gonna go for it, right. But I mean, you could, you know.
That's
as long as
something that
someone-
we can,
Yeah.
look at defining is that as an entity, you're only gonna manage funding that would support up to this percent.
Yeah, I think that is a decision that we could make, and I think you make a wonderful point because at Community Works, where I used to work, we managed 6 down payment assistance programs as a loan fund, mainly with our hospital systems. And so, for example, you can imagine Prisma in Columbia and in Greenville, their down payment assistance program looked very different than
Mhm.
Beaufort, where the housing costs are twice as much.
Mhm.
And so we designed the down payment assistance program in partnership with the employer.
Mhm.
And then it's a great way to leverage your capacity because you get to like leverage money and then
Mhm.
also the administrative fee. But you do design it based on that. But we do look at like not more than 150 or not more. And like I think like for example, they were trying to recruit nurses
Yeah.
and folks in the hospital. So it did go a little bit higher income.
Right.
But you know, the average house in Beaufort is like 600,000 to your point. So
Mhm.
they did look at that. And then I think Macon is looking at the school
The
district,
school
right?
district is having a problem retaining.
Right.
So they can get new teachers, but then they leave and go somewhere else and buy a house somewhere else. So their school district is actually looking at how do they structure a DPA program that will help them retain.
So you could, this fund, we could, like we could somehow, the school district, for example, could be using it itself as a way of putting money in there to help new teachers find
Yes.
places.
To say you administer it because you, housing fund, are experts in affordable housing and compliance and managing this kind of money. You
And
have.
we don't wanna manage it.
We're focused on educating the people of Athens-Clarke County.
Exactly. We don't wanna manage this.
Right, but we want to incentivize
But it's
people to stay
important.
here.
That's right. That's the same reason you'll see like chambers and hospitals and, you know, get involved in this kind of work. Macon's chamber is thinking about a down payment assistance program. They know and understand that you cannot recruit and retain talent if they cannot live close to where they work. It becomes
Exactly.
exponentially harder.
Yeah, so the HTF again, it's starting with what we have, but it doesn't mean that it's limited to what we are investing.
Mhm.
All it means is that we get it up and running
Right.
and our money is used for this. And then they can pull other resources to create a bigger, so they can actually
Or the
look at.
community could use it
Yeah.
to.
Correct.
do
Right.
things.
So
It's
it's
a
it's
vehicle.
another tool in our tool belt. You've got HCD doing this with our focus. You've
Mhm.
got this that can focus here and
Yeah.
bigger. So absolutely.
And
And
it's really the point of it is to leverage those dollars.
That's it.
absolutely.
Like, you're supposed to be a very small portion of
Yeah.
it, what the city's actually.
Mhm.
supposed to do,
Absolutely.
Right? Like ultimately you want it to grow.
Oh yeah, you want
Like, this is
philanthropy,
bigger
you
than a
want
$6
banks.
million issue, right?
Absolutely.
Like, it's way bigger. So y'all have taken, kudos to you, the most important step, which is here's the seed money.
To get it started.
Here,
Up
get it
and running.
started. Like, we put our money where our mouth is. We want housing and we want it now.
Yeah.
So,
And that way, other businesses
Yeah.
in the community.
May invest.
Right, can invest so that they can hire, employees and have an invested interest in them living in the community.
Right.
Yeah, I think this is certainly the more appropriate way to handle the workforce housing
Right.
issue that Athens has.
True.
That's not our focus.
Can't do that.
HCD doesn't
Right.
have the funding to focus on that, but this would be a great tool.
With economic development.
Yeah.
Yeah, to expand on that. So
Yeah, just a quick time check. We have about 15
I
minutes
was
left of
just
our
looking.
scheduled time. We
Yep.
did start.
if
about
y'all
10
don't
minutes
mind,
late.
if you want to go an extra 15 since we kind of started late,
Yeah.
you want to run till
Depending on where
noon.
you are.
I think
Yeah,
we're at the end
yeah,
of like
you
an
could-
hour, and then we were opening it up for discussion. We're gonna talk about next steps, but thank you for
Yeah.
the time check in.
Yeah.
I did want to tap into Marquita, what you were saying about, and tomorrow we're meeting with some of different community partners and leaders like the chamber and others, because you're absolutely right. We could leverage these other community relationships, whether that's the anchor institutions, the financial institutions, the large employers, Caterpillar, the health system, you name it, to like participate in this fund. But you created the vehicle for which they can now do that,
Absolutely.
which is like is really like the headline. And I think you bring up a great point with that. Do you want to wrap up on Atlanta? I know
Atlanta, so full disclosure, we've not yet talked to Atlanta, which I think underscores how big and complex they are.
Can you call us?
I know, please.
You're smiling and you're like, yeah, I know.
Yeah, and also like understanding too that Atlanta is not, there's like a different league altogether.
It's like, they might as well be a different.
Well, they have leeway that nobody else in Georgia.
But they do have a lot of cool funds.
Yeah, they do.
Yes.
And so I think it's a good example of that. Like they're using a lot of developer fees.
Uh-huh.
Their funds are very like neighborhood specific.
Yes.
And so I think it's worth just kind of looking at some of those pieces. They do a ton of bonds. So stay tuned for more information from them. We'll glean what we can from them.
And they're led out of their economic development authority.
Quasi-governmental.
So it's quasi-government. So it's a little bit different structure than what we're leaning in. But I do think some of the funds that they've established and the sources that they're using, I think is where we really want to lean in.
And I also want to understand their staffing structure and kind of how they're managing all of this. It's not abundant. I mean, if you filter on their website by community development staff, it's like way more than 5 people. So I want to understand like what they're actually using to administer these funds, knowing that they do a bunch of other stuff.
Recognize that house?
I know, that's what I said. Okay, house.
It's beautiful. I know.
That was a recent ribbon cutting.
Was it a new construction or
Yes.
rehab?
It's new construction rental.
Okay.
Yay.
Okay. It's beautiful. Yeah.
Now, the one to the right
The
is
green one or
new construction home buyer.
okay.
Nice.
All in my district.
Yay.
Yep,
Yay.
all
Oh,
of it.
good.
Good.
We need a tour.
You're gonna get one.
Oh, good.
Love to see it. So just some key findings. These are not going to, blow your mind based off the last almost 2 hours that we've spent together, but sort of themes that came up over and over and over again. Flexibility and the ability to be responsive to local needs. Like every person I've talked to talked about that. Varying degrees of municipal representation in decision making, from a seat on the loan committee all the way up to, in the case of Asheville, city council has approved every loan. But there was always some involvement, but not necessarily control, particularly once you get into these, independent nonprofit organizations. So staffing capacity that came up almost every time, regardless of where the entity, what the entity type was. It was like staffing is an issue. At some point you will have to fundraise. You just have to go out and raise additional dollars. Also gets back to our point about you want a good balance in your portfolio of money so that you always have money revolving, so you don't have to wait 30 years and then get paid back all at once. It's not good.
So you need someone who's in the leadership who's able to do that, right? Not
That's
just the
nitty
technical
gritty
things.
loan.
Right, but that's
Great
sort of
point.
incentivizing other entities to get money.
Yeah, you make a great point, and that's I think one reason why these nonprofit entities, the board plays ambassador roles to raise money, as well as like several folks have executive directors that do that.
Well, I was gonna say, if you look at the make and bid model, where you were talking about, national is managing the loan portion of it.
Right.
So the director's role is the fundraising and actually taking the application and the startup, and is responsible for the forward facing or the outward facing. And then you've got national in the background actually manage or underwriting and then managing.
Yeah. Now, pretty much y'all have already decided this, but just every person I talked to said make loans, don't grant the money out, make loans, generate revenue, get the money back. I had a dear colleague of mine who, and I've remembered this forever, who says the revolving loan model is very simple. Money in, money out, money back.
Exactly.
That's it.
No acronym needed.
No acronym, no acronym, even I can understand that. That was Dina.
Yeah.
Money in, money out, money back.
So in some ways, like it's like student, what's we call it, loans, like for college loans that are being in Athens Tech for a long time. There's a lot of people who can't afford to not have their jobs, so they're taking out loans, and you get very good student loans at interest, but it's all coming back. And for the person who's doing that, that's their incentive, is that they're going to have that ability to either build wealth or, in the case of the student loan, get into a profession.
Right.
So that we're, yeah,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And in the case of affordable housing finance, the incentive is this particular tool can offer a very flexible, low cost piece of financing that actually enables these deals to pencil out and cash flow so that the borrower can service the debt, because affordable housing deals by their nature, you cannot charge market rate rents. So it requires a lower cost of capital to make these deals work.
And
So-
and I think it also replaces the fact that these other funds that you administer, which are wonderful, have a lot of strings and a lot of requirements.
Oh, yeah, a lot of red tape and bureaucracy
And may or may not be available,
and
in
may
the
or may
future.
not be available.
not guaranteed.
But, and again, you already have a grant program. You already have a grant program. You don't want another grant program.
Right.
You need that that revenue generating source. So you want to do that as a loan. If they're interested in a grant, then come to us.
Right. Rising cost of land and construction, cited as a challenge. Again, I told you none of this was gonna blow your mind. That's obvious. As someone who has been an affordable housing advocate for 20+ years, I only heard one group cite NIMBY as a challenge.
Oh, we got that here.
It was Buford Jasper that cited it. And
That
doesn't mean
doesn't
it,
surprise me.
yeah, me either. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist other places, but I do think it is reflective of that there is a growing acknowledgement that this is an issue, and it is not just a low income poor people issue. Like this is everybody's.
And I caught their air from them, not in my backyard.
Yeah. Yeah, you know that one. Yeah, exactly.
We want YIMBY.
Yeah.
We want
That's the acronym that we like.
Well, and I think, we're working on a future land use, planning is working on future land use map. And, Athens is small. It's the smallest land measurement county in the state.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I mean, we're the smallest
I
and
didn't
we have huge population. And so far, most of the development has been kind of centered in the loop.
Yeah.
And we not gonna have a choice but go outside of the loop. So it's one of those things where we have to look at. I know that neighborhoods have traditionally been this, but that's not sustainable in our growth metrics. When you look at how big Athens, or how many people are coming into Athens annually and what that population is going to look like, it's, we have to look at more diverse, dense type of building activities rather than, I know it's been this is single neighborhood residential, but you may need multifamily right across the street from you. It's just in order to meet and accommodate the needs of all Athenians.
Well, and you make a great point. One of the things, and since you all are commissioners in particular, is like I often say there's financing and funding, but there's permission.
Yeah.
The permission to make affordable housing happen through your land use, through your zoning regulations, through some of the other tools that you have in the toolbox is very instrumental, because if you've got all the funding in the world, but then it's prohibited by zoning or by land use, you're not going to be able to get to your goals. So it's a really great point. Well, I know we're sort of at the end of our time, a few more minutes.
It's helpful to hearing about other models and understanding the challenges and the benefits.
Make a little more sense now?
Yeah. No, it totally does.
Good.
I have some questions. Just
We got plenty of time.
later.
Oh, okay. All right.
What's been covered?
Okay.
I reach out.
Absolutely.
There's a commission and they're like, hey, where are you? I'm like, hey girl, why you not here? So yeah, this was so informative to me. Like,
Good.
I'm so excited I
Yeah.
really am. I'm really
We're
excited to know or to, learn more and see how the process plays out and for the ribbon cutting or celebration.
Yeah.
Good.
And it makes it seem like a real, like, we're talking about affordable housing, talking about even, even putting money there, but how do you take that money and turn it into actual housing?
Mhm.
And it also makes it clear that you have to set up a few steps, so it's not gonna be like just
Houses tomorrow.
tomorrow.
Which
Yeah.
I've been telling y'all.
So figure that out. That would be amazing.
Yeah, everything's phased in phases.
Mhm.
We wish we could just.
Well, and you,
Today, tomorrow.
yeah, but you don't want to throw this together and have a product that's not going to be
Mhm.
successful. You've got to set it up for success.
Right.
And unfortunately, that takes a little bit of time to get it where it needs to be. We have models that we can follow, so we're not starting from scratch.
Right.
Yeah.
But we've got to make sure that our model fits Athens and it's
Right.
doing what
That's right.
we need for our community with an idea of what everybody else is doing that we can pull, like, oh, we like this will
Yeah,
work, we like this, and then really focus it for how it's going to be most successful and really impact Athens in a
Yeah.
positive way.
And also seeing the other possibilities for money from Athens-Clarke
Yes.
County in there, because, last year, not this past June, but the other before, where we put the 5 million in. And then this year, like when we went to the budget, like my goal was just to get to get a line item in.
Which we were
you know,
grateful for.
a line item in there, but that was like from 5 to 1. So
Yeah.
like, but even at that, it makes it really clear, like even if you were putting $1 million or $2 million, you really need more and you need other things. So that helps me understand.
Well, look at how
the
fast we
stat.
wiped out 4.5 million.
Right.
Like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Gone.
Yeah, I mean, housing is
Absolutely.
expensive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It's expensive. And, I feel like it's a process because we want to get it right. Because what you all have done is so important. You put up the first
Yeah.
money.
Yeah.
Like, we don't want to blow. This is an amazing opportunity. We want to get it right. We want it to work for Athens. We want it to be
Right.
reflective because we want to grow this. Like, the goal is to set this thing up so you can grow it.
Absolutely.
It's so
A legacy.
It's a
something that's
legacy.
gonna keep
So
long
important.
past us.
Yeah.
And one thing
that's-
is clear, like we all forget about where the funding is coming from. There is a 100% agreement
I love
that
it.
we need to be addressing affordable
Yeah.
housing.
I love it.
Absolutely.
That's
Like
like
the
we have to. That's a
community
gift.
driven. I mean, that's
Yeah.
I mean, because the other thing is too, we also, like Anna's saying, it's like we can't. I mean, we could write a loan policy for it. We could do all that in like the back room or no. But we need listening. We need to have these conversations. We need to hear from community, from partners, from you all as commissioners, like what this should and could look like, not just based on some model that we decide, right? And
Yeah.
that's really why this process does take much longer because it's very intentional.
And we need to all be educated.
Yes,
And
we are.
buy-in
We
from-
have to continue to educate people.
Yeah.
Commissioners, citizens, businesses, you will have to continue to educate people, particularly if you're going to start talking about density.
Yeah.
Oh,
So-
yes. Oh, yes. Oh, no.
In this stage one though, who else are you, besides Tiffany and me here? Right?
So
And
this
you're going to-
afternoon, we're
Yeah.
meeting with GIC.
Yeah,
And then tomorrow, we're meeting with the manager's office. We're meeting with First American Bank and Trust.
okay.
We're meeting with non-housing partners that use housing, like our ABHS, Athens Area
Chamber.
Homeless Shelter, Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
So non-housing, and then later we're meeting housing developers, private and nonprofit.
Yeah.
So are you basically going through this with all of
Yes.
them?
Yes.
It's the
Okay.
same thing,
Same presentation.
but we expect different
Yeah.
Yeah.
questions and different.
We have some different activities we're gonna do like later this afternoon to get like, 'cause it's gonna be a larger group and this is a more intimate setting, which is great. And then the other thing is in this next phase, we will be doing like developer survey, we'll be
Yeah.
doing one-on-one interviews. So we have a lot more intel to get. So that's really gonna be a lot in the next phase. And so then when we come back to you, we'll be like, this is all we've learned, this is what we're hearing, here's some initial recommendations. And then there'll be go from there. And then the next phase, which is actually developing those pieces. So.
Well, I'll be curious to see what you get. I'll come back to Melinda and find out, like, how it
Yeah,
all differentiates.
absolutely.
It's like you have the same class 5 times, right? It's like,
You're
I
always
know.
gonna get
but
different
everyone's
results.
different results.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I expect this afternoon's meeting to be
Totally
totally
different.
different. Totally, same stuff, totally different. Because you're dealing with a different group of people
Was that one
coming from different.
That one, is that gonna be on the little guy?
It will
No.
not be live streamed.
No.
Oh,
I mean, you're welcome to join, you're welcome to
No,
attend.
I know, no,
It's
no,
a
got,
lot.
like, that's enough of this.
Okay,
here.
I was confirmed, but I believe this electronic room.
Okay,
Yeah.
over there,
Have
okay,
a
No, they don't.
okay.
That's our limitation, unfortunately.
1 o'clock.
Okay.
No, it's at
Yeah.
Situla. No, every office space in Athens is occupied this week. We struggled to get spaces to meet.
Must be
I don't know
some
what in the world was going
There
on,
was a
but
lot of people at our hotel with a bunch of
They're all-
name tags.
Oh, well, there's a home game this weekend.
That's,
So a lot of people, and ESPN's coming in this
yes,
weekend.
they are.
So
You might
Oh,
need to
okay.
see Kirk Street is dull.
are we?
I think we're wrapped up. Are we?
Yes.
Okay, then
I
that's
think there are probably more comments, just for us to maybe think about
Sure.
more, especially how Atlanta's using their TAD revenue
yes.
to fund this,
Mhm.
as well as if you have any other examples of other college towns that have implemented housing trust funds and some of the unique things that they.
Oh, yeah, we got that.
Okay.
We got it.
Sure, yeah.
Wait, and Durham.
Those are our peer
It's a
Uh,
college town, because I feel like there's a lot of our,
Yeah.
especially in District 3, we have a lot of, college students that's moving in.
There's been a lot of gentrification on the east side with student housing.
I took, well, we need to call it studentification.
Studentification,
No,
true.
Yeah, because it's so.
You're right.
if I
It's
think
not
about
permanent
The
residence.
boulevard area there, and that's what I'm saying, like, if I look 40 years back, that was completely different. And
Residential, and
that's
now it's students.
gentrification. Well, no, it's not students.
Oh.
Where East Athens,
Yeah.
you can just see the way the structures are, where,
Yeah.
you got $1 million houses on Nantahala now, where, those aren't students. So there's,
Yeah.
you got the two things going on.
You make a great point though, but like SCAD is an example. Savannah's got hit really hard with not only hospitality, but the SCAD has just taken over
Yep.
most of the city. So that is a college, a different type of college,
Yeah.
in terms of the number of population of students. But I think I mentioned Charleston did a whole town and gown because of College of Charleston and Medical University of South Carolina.
Yeah.
Where they
Yeah.
put a lot of the production of some housing for students on the colleges and universities. So there is a lot, it's a great point. There's a lot of examples.
Yeah.
But TAD is also, there are some, I don't think we talked about any examples, but it would be helpful if there are any jurisdictions using TAD to support it. Is that even allowed?
Yeah.
I saw in Atlanta.
Atlanta.
Yep,
Yeah.
but we take that with a grain of salt, because again, no, I mean, we want to look at it,
Different.
but rules are different for Atlanta than everywhere else.
Is that like a tip for you guys? TAD is
Tax allocation.
Tax allocation
Yeah.
districts, and
So
we have
it's like,
6
yeah.
Yeah.
In my district we have a TAD as well, so I have TAD and studentification.
Okay, you have both.
You got a lot going on.
to
But
identification.
TAD, for example, affordable housing, and also with the
Mhm.
TAD, would it be, could you be making a fund in this that was just used for this area? I mean, I think you probably can from what you said, but like, could you have if it was that district and your TAD number, whatever, 4, could there be a TAD, you could put it in here and that money has to be reinvested into that,
Yeah.
into 4?
Oh,
I think that's
rather
the way
than
that
a
Atlanta
large-
Beltline.
Atlanta has
Yeah.
done some of
Yeah.
that, and that's a good question to
Yeah.
ask them.
Yeah, that is how Invest Atlanta manages.
Yep.
The
certain-
Beltline.
Yeah.
And the
Beltline.
Centennial redevelopment, I think, as well.
Because isn't
Signs,
affordable
neighborhood.
housing one of the TAD
Yeah.
priorities, along with the grocery store?
yes,
Yeah.
a lot of things.
Yeah.
You almost, I need
yeah,
about 2 more.
And
More
I know
terms.
you mentioned about some of the other communities using neighborhoods, to drive the efforts for. And so that might be something
Yeah,
that would work.
yeah.
Okay, I get excited, y'all.
Great.
All right.
Well, we
Adjourning
appreciate you
the
attending.
meeting.
Glad you
Yeah,
could.
thank
Glad you could.
Thank y'all so much for taking the time.
Yes.
I love to see it.